At dinner, Mom proudly said, "Your sister's the real provider of this family." Everyone applauded. I smiled and replied, "Then she can also provide for your overdue bills and rent, since I'm done." My name is Haley Martinez. I'm 29 years old, and I've always dreaded family dinners. Not because I hate my family, though honestly, hate might be too strong a word and love feels a bit generous, but because these gatherings have this way of stripping away whatever thin veneer of politeness we pretend to maintain. They transform courtesy into theater, affection into weapons. And tonight, at my cousin Amber's birthday celebration, that theater was already falling apart before I even found my seat. The restaurant was one of those trendy places in downtown Portland. All Edison bulbs and exposed brick, with the clink of champagne glasses somehow sounding louder than the indie folk music playing through hidden speakers. Every table around us buzzed with laughter, celebration, genuine joy. Our table? It looked like a stage set waiting for the next scene of dysfunction. My parents, Linda and Michael, sat at one end, their smiles stretched too wide, pretending everything was perfectly fine. Amber perched at the head of the table, her eyes nervously darting between me and my older sister Jessica. And Jessica was absolutely glowing in the attention. Perfect hair cascading over her shoulders, perfect smile plastered across her face, perfect illusion of having her life together. I recognized that look. Her version of confidence. But underneath? Pure desperation. The kind that feeds on being noticed, even if someone else has to bleed for it. "Haley, over here, sweetie," Mom called out in that sing-song voice that immediately put me on edge. "Sit next to your sister." Of course. Because why not position me as the emotional target before we even ordered appetizers? I slid into my seat, forced a polite smile, and grabbed the menu like a shield. I'd made myself a promise before walking in here: smile, nod, pay my share of the check, and go home. Keep it simple. Keep it civil. That was the plan anyway. But Jessica had other plans entirely. She leaned back in her chair with that lazy confidence only freeloaders seem to master. Legs crossed, one arm draped over the back of her seat. Then, loud enough for half the table to hear, she smirked at me. "Still single, Hales?" Her voice dripped with fake concern. "I guess nobody wants to date a workaholic control freak." The table went silent for exactly 2 seconds before my parents chuckled. Dad shook his head like he'd just heard the punchline to a harmless joke. "Jessica, behave yourself," he said, but his smile never wavered. Heat flooded my cheeks, not from shame, but from that slow-burning anger I'd spent years learning to swallow. That familiar rage I've been taught to keep buried because family doesn't fight in public. I forced myself to smile. "You're absolutely right," I said lightly, tilting my head at her. "Nobody wants to date a control freak." I paused, letting the moment breathe. "Just like nobody wants to pay your rent." Her smirk faltered. "What?" I leaned in slightly, keeping that same pleasant smile on my face. "Oh, that's right. The money comes from me." For one perfect heartbeat, nobody spoke. The air around our table seemed to crystallize. Mom froze mid-sip of her wine. Dad's hand stopped halfway to his water glass. Even Amber looked up, eyes wide with shock. I pulled my phone from my purse with deliberate calm, unlocking it with a soft click. "Actually," I continued, my voice steady and clear, "it used to come from me." A few quick taps later, I opened my banking app. One swipe, 2 taps, the automatic rent transfer? Cancelled. Another few swipes, and there went the utilities card. Frozen. "Done," I said simply, setting my phone face down beside my plate. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was absolutely beautiful. Jessica's face drained of all color. "You're not serious." "Oh, I am." "Haley, this isn't funny." Her voice had an edge of panic now. "I'm not laughing." Dad cleared his throat, his jaw tight. "Haley, this isn't the time or the place." "No," I cut him off quietly. "It's exactly the time and place. You all laughed when she mocked me. You all looked the other way when she took advantage of me. But now that I've stopped paying, suddenly it's inappropriate." Jessica shoved back her chair, her face flushed. "You're completely overreacting. It was just a joke." So was my financial stability, apparently. Her eyes started to Mom for backup, but Mom was staring into her wine glass, lips pressed into a thin line. Dad looked ready to scold me, but seemed to have lost his prepared speech. I sat back, feeling strangely detached, like I was watching the scene from outside my own body. "You've been mocking me for being alone, Jessica, but let me remind you, without me, you wouldn't even have a place to mock me from. If you want to understand why that one sentence detonated like a grenade at dinner, you need to know the story behind it." Because this didn't start at Amber's birthday celebration. This started the day I agreed to help my sister get back on her feet. Translation: the day I became her personal ATM. It started 3 years ago, the same week Jessica's life supposedly imploded. At least, that's how she told it. Her boyfriend had dumped her. She'd quit her job at the boutique because the manager was toxic and controlling. She had nowhere to go. That's what she said, standing outside my apartment door in the rain, mascara running down her cheeks, clutching a grocery bag with maybe 3 outfits and a half-dead succulent. I remember her exact words: "Hales, I just need a little help. Just for 1 month until I figure things out." Behind her, rain poured down, soaking her knockoff designer flats. I could have said no. I should have said no. But guilt is a language my family speaks fluently, and I'd been fluent since childhood. So I opened the door. She came in, dropped her bag, and exhaled like she'd just checked into a 5-star spa. "You're a lifesaver," she murmured, looking around my small 1-bedroom in Northeast Portland. "It's so clean in here. Like, hotel clean. Do you even actually live here, or do you just work and clean?" I smiled thinly. "I live here. And I work so I can afford to keep it this way." Jessica laughed, but her eyes were already scanning the space. The coffee maker, the wine rack, the framed photos on the wall. I could practically see the gears turning, calculating what she could borrow first. Within 3 days, she'd made herself completely at home. My couch became her bed. My groceries became her meals. My Netflix account became her all-day entertainment streaming service. "I'll pay you back once I start working again," she'd say casually. Once, not if. That word kept me hooked. The first month, I paid the deposit on a small apartment for her across town in Southeast Portland. She swore she'd take over payments after landing her new job. Then that job fell through. Then another one. Then she decided she'd freelance. That's how it started. Just a little help, then came the phone calls from my parents. "Sweetheart, she's been through such a rough time. You have a stable job at the accounting firm. You can afford to help your sister out. Family looks after family, Haley. You're lucky you don't have kids. You wouldn't understand what real stress looks like." And so I started covering her rent monthly. Then utilities. Then her phone bill because it's essential for job hunting. When I hesitated, Mom sighed that particular sigh. "She's your sister. Don't be petty." Just like that, my bank account became our family's collective safety net, months blurred together. I barely noticed how often my phone buzzed with payment reminders or how my own utility bill quietly doubled. Until one day, I looked closer. Electricity? Doubled. Internet upgraded to some premium gaming package. Streaming services, Netflix, Disney+, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, all under my name and credit card. But one line item made me freeze. $425. Club VIP Lounge. I stared at the charge for a full minute before calling her. "Hey, Hales." Jessica's voice was bright, artificially cheerful. "What's up?" "What's Club VIP Lounge?" A pause. "Oh, that's just my landlord's payment system. The property management company. Your landlord is called Club VIP Lounge? Don't be so judgmental, Haley. It's just, you wouldn't get it." I hung up. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of them were polite enough to say out loud. Still, I didn't cancel the card. I told myself it was easier to keep the peace, easier to just pay it and move on. That's the thing about guilt. It doesn't ask you to love someone, just to sacrifice quietly until you forget what boundaries even look like. The emotional jabs came next. Every family gathering turned into a roast, and I was always the punchline. "Careful, everyone," Jessica would laugh over Sunday brunch pancakes. "Haley might send you an invoice for that mimosa." Mom would giggle. Dad would shake his head with a knowing smile. I'd sit there, smiling tightly, pretending the words didn't sting. But they did. Every single time. Then one Tuesday afternoon, an email arrived that changed everything. Subject: Notice. Late rent payment. Tenant: Jessica Martinez. It was from her building manager, addressed directly to me. I read it 3 times, my heart sinking further with each word. My name was listed as the emergency contact. Somehow, she'd gotten me tied into her lease. I called her immediately, my hands shaking. "Why am I getting rent notices for you?" "It's just a mistake," she said quickly. "I already paid. They're just slow to update." "Really?" "Because my bank shows the transfer went through, and then money moved right back out to someone named Derek." She snapped. "God, Haley, don't be so classist." "Jessica, that's not classism. That's theft." She hung up on me, That Sunday, I printed out the email and brought it to lunch at my parents' house in Beaverton. When everyone sat down, I placed it in the middle of the table like evidence in a courtroom trial. "What's this?" Dad asked, frowning at the paper. "Proof that Jessica isn't paying her rent." "Even though I am." Mom pursed her lips. "Haley, why would you humiliate your sister like this?" "Humiliate her?" My voice rose slightly. "She's one step away from eviction. I'm trying to stop that from happening." Jessica walked in mid-sentence, wearing the leather jacket I'd bought her last Christmas, the expensive one from Nordstrom. She froze when she saw the printed email, then smirked. "Wow. Are you really turning family into a courtroom right now?" I clenched my jaw. "You've been lying to me." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "You're just bitter because you're single and have nothing better to spend your money on." The entire table went silent. Something inside me, something small and tired and absolutely done, finally snapped. "You have 2 weeks," I said clearly, looking directly at her. "After that, I'm cutting you off. Rent, utilities, everything." They all stared at me like I'd physically slapped her across the face. Mom gasped. "Haley, you can't just abandon her like this." Dad frowned deeply. "She's trying her best." Jessica scoffed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "You'll cave. You always do." I didn't argue. I just stood up, gathered my purse, and walked out. That night, my phone exploded. "Mom's guilt trips you're breaking your father's heart. She's your sister. What if something happens to her?" Dad's lectures about family loyalty, delivered via voicemail in that disappointed tone he'd perfected. Jessica's voice notes, alternating between rage and desperation. "I don't need your money anyway. Actually, they're charging me a late fee. Can you spot $200? You're actually evil. Like, seriously evil." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and started systematically unlinking everything. Rent accounts. Shared credit cards. Amazon Prime login. I froze my credit report, canceled all automatic transfers, changed every password. It felt ruthless. Surgical, even. But it also felt absolutely necessary. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't preparing to save someone. I was preparing to save myself. The following Sunday, my parents' house felt different when I walked in. Heavier. The dining room was already set: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. All the usual comfort foods. Except nobody looked comfortable. I'd brought something with me. Another printed email. The latest late rent notice from Jessica's landlord. Jessica was late. Naturally. She always was. Mom gave me that tight, artificial smile she reserves for family issues that should stay private. "Haley," she said sweetly, "let's not ruin lunch." "Okay, sure," I replied. "Then maybe your other daughter should stop using me like a credit card with no limit." Dad sighed heavily, like I'd already exhausted him just by existing. "You're being dramatic again." "Am I?" I slid the folded paper across the table until it stopped directly in front of him. "Read it." He hesitated before unfolding it. As his eyes scanned the page, his frown deepened into something darker. Mom glanced over his shoulder. "What is that?" "A notice," I said calmly. "From Jessica's landlord. She's behind on rent. Again. Even though I already transferred the money last month." Mom's eyes narrowed defensively. "Haley, we don't need to air every detail of your personal finances at the dinner table." "This isn't about my finances, Mom. This is about lies." Just then, the front door opened. Jessica swept in like she was walking a runway, sunglasses perched on her head, that same Nordstrom jacket draped casually over one shoulder. "Sorry, traffic on I-5 was a nightmare," she announced breezily, like nothing was wrong. When she spotted the paper on the table, her smile faltered. "What's this?" she asked carefully. I didn't answer. Just watched her face. Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister says you're behind on rent." Again. Jessica's eyes flicked between him and me. Then she laughed. Light, airy, completely fake. "Oh, that. It's just a clerical error." "Haley's being paranoid again." "Then explain," I said evenly, "why my transfer went through and then immediately disappeared into someone named Derek's account." Her smile froze in place. "Wow. You actually track all that? That's kind of creepy, Haley. Call it whatever you want. I'm done paying for your clerical errors." Jessica scoffed. "Oh, please. You think you're so perfect because you have your little job and your neat apartment? You're miserable, Haley. Everyone knows it." "Girls, stop," Mom hissed. But I was past stopping. "At least I pay for my own life," I said quietly. Jessica leaned forward. "You're just jealous of what?" I asked. "Your unpaid bills? Your fake luxury lifestyle?" Her face flushed red. You're just bitter because you're single and have nothing better to do than control everyone else's lives. The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were true, but because I suddenly realized how often she'd weaponized my insecurities against me. She'd always known exactly where to stab. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Everyone froze. In the thick silence that followed, I found my voice again. Calm. Final. You have 2 weeks, I said, looking straight at Jessica. After that, I'm done. Rent, utilities, phone bill, all of it. The room went completely still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Mom's voice came out small but sharp. Haley, you can't just abandon your sister like this. I met her eyes steadily. She's 35 years old, Mom. I'm not abandoning her. I'm setting her free. Jessica let out a harsh, humorless laugh. You'll cave. You always do. But I didn't answer. I just stood, gathered my things, and walked out the door. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry anymore, just done. When I cut Jessica off, I expected drama. I didn't expect a full campaign. It started with a group text from Mom, titled Family Emergency. We all need to rally around Jessica during this difficult time. Then Dad chimed in with his own message. Haley has decided to cut your sister off without warning. We need to discuss this as a family. Then Aunt Margaret, who I hadn't heard from in 6 months, suddenly appeared. Why was Haley paying her bills in the first place? For once, the silence that followed didn't make me anxious. It made me smile. Monday morning, Jessica called. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the same tone she uses when she wants something. Hey, Hales. I'm trying to set up autopay for next month's rent, but the card isn't working. Did the bank block it or something? I leaned back in my office chair. No, Jessica. I did. She laughed like I'd told a joke. You're kidding. Nope. The line went quiet. Then her voice turned sharp. You can't do that. I already did. You think cutting me off makes you some kind of hero? You'll regret this when nobody's around to help you. I smiled faintly. Maybe, but you'll regret never learning to help yourself. She hung up. That was day 1. By day 3, she'd shifted to emotional warfare. Long, rambling voice notes where tears mixed with manipulation. You're not just my sister. You're supposed to be my best friend. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm literally having panic attacks because of you. You've always needed to feel superior. Just admit it. I didn't reply to any of them. Then came the guilt calls from Mom. Honey, your sister had a breakdown last night. She's not built like you. She's sensitive. So am I, Mom, I said flatly. I just stopped paying for it. By Thursday, the tactics shifted from pleading to pure rage. I got a fraud alert on my phone. An attempted charge on the utilities card I'd frozen. 10 minutes later, another notification: credit application denied. She'd tried to open a new credit line using my information. I immediately blocked her number, reported the attempted fraud, and closed the shared account completely. The silence after that felt almost sacred. But peace never lasts long in my family. Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Paul, your sister's property manager. You're listed as an emergency contact on her lease. I rubbed my temples. I'm not a guarantor. I understand, but rent is overdue. If payment isn't received by 5 p.m. today, we'll issue a pay or quit notice. Then do your job, I said calmly, and remove my contact information from your system. A pause. Then an almost amused chuckle. Will do. Have a good day, Ms. Martinez. Click. One more rope cut clean. That evening, I made myself tea, sat on my balcony, and watched the sunset over Portland. The city felt different. Quieter. Lighter. For years, I'd been living under a constant hum of anxiety, always bracing for the next emergency. And now? Nothing. Just me, my silence, and the kind of peace money can't buy. That afternoon, another email arrived. Family strategy dinner. Sunday 6 p.m. attendance mandatory. Of course it was mandatory. Dad loved structure and control. He probably had a PowerPoint ready, but for the first time, I didn't feel dread. I felt ready, because boundaries mean nothing if you only draw them in private. Sometimes you have to defend them in front of the very people who taught you to erase them. When I arrived that Sunday, Dad had indeed prepared handouts labeled Agenda. Mom sat with her carefully neutral expression. Jessica looked wrecked, puffy eyes, trembling hands, but still wearing mascara. Guilt as performance art. Dad cleared his throat. We've developed a simple bridge plan. I smiled faintly. Of course you have. Just 90 days, he continued. You cover rent while Jessica transitions. She'll handle utilities herself. Mom chimed in gently. Sweetheart, be reasonable. You know she's had a difficult time. For 3 years, I've been reasonable, I said quietly. I slid my phone across the table. Look. Transaction logs. Charges. Screenshots. Months of proof. I pulled up the evidence I'd saved. Club fees. Online shopping. Streaming upgrades. $425 for a VIP table, I said clearly. That's not survival. That's entitlement. Jessica's voice cracked. Why are you doing this to me? Because you never stopped, I replied simply. Amber, sitting quietly off to the side, finally spoke up. Maybe Jessica should sell some of her things. That gaming setup. That watch. I'm not selling my watch, Jessica snapped. Then you're not serious, I said calmly. Nobody spoke after that. The silence stretched until it became unbearable for everyone except me. In the end, Jessica sold the jacket and her gaming equipment. She borrowed the rest from friends and paid her rent on her own for the first time in 3 years. She didn't thank me. And for once, I didn't need her to. It's strange how quiet peace can feel after years of chaos. No phone calls. No guilt. No panic alerts lighting up my screen at 2 a.m. Just silence. Not the heavy kind, but the kind that hums softly like a new beginning. A week after the strategy dinner, I woke up at 7 out of habit, expecting the usual nod of anxiety, an overdraft alert, a message from Jessica, something to fix. But there was nothing. My hands didn't shake when I reached for my phone. My coffee didn't taste like exhaustion. It just tasted like coffee. For the first time in forever, I sat there and actually enjoyed it. When I got to work that morning, Marcus, my boyfriend of 9 months, was waiting outside with 2 lattes and that quiet smile that always made me feel safe. He'd stayed mostly out of the drama, respecting my space, but he'd witnessed the emotional toll it took on me. He handed me the coffee. So, how's freedom treating you? Lighter, I said, smiling. Weirdly light. He nodded. It's supposed to feel weird. You spent years carrying weight that wasn't yours. I looked at him, struck by how rare it was for someone to say that without judgment or pity. Just simple truth. A few weeks passed quietly. My parents reached out cautiously, like people approaching a wild animal they'd underestimated. Mom sent recipes as peace offerings. Made your favorite chili today. Miss you. Dad left a short voicemail. You were right about some things. I didn't rush to reply. I wasn't angry anymore. Just careful. Jessica, meanwhile, went completely silent. No texts. No calls. The absence felt strange, but I didn't mourn it. Boundaries mean accepting silence, even when you crave closure. 2 months later, Amber invited me to her new apartment for a small get-together. When I walked in, the first person I saw was Jessica. She looked different. Smaller, not physically, but energetically. No designer jacket. No full face of makeup. No entitled gleam in her eyes. Just a tired human. She glanced up, and for a moment I thought she'd look away. But she didn't. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. We stood in awkward silence until Amber swooped in with her usual bright energy. Look at my 2 favorite cousins finally in the same room. Who wants wine? We both laughed. Hesitant, but real. Later, when the noise died down and most guests had left, Jessica came over to where I stood on the balcony. I sold the watch, she said softly. And the bag. Even picked up warehouse shifts at Target. It's humbling. I'm glad, I said simply. She looked down at her hands. I used to tell myself you only helped because you liked controlling people. But I get it now. You just didn't know how to stop. That made me pause. You're not wrong. She nodded, eyes glistening slightly. I'm sorry, Haley. It wasn't dramatic. No tears. No movie moment hug. Just 2 women standing in the quiet truth of what they'd done to each other and what they were finally learning to undo. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. My life filled with small, peaceful rituals. Thursday pottery classes. Sunday morning runs with Marcus through Forest Park. Late dinners with Amber. I started reclaiming corners of my life I'd given away, one transaction at a time. My couch wasn't a guest bed anymore. My paycheck stayed in my account. My energy wasn't spent patching up someone else's poor choices. Months later, I saw a photo of Jessica pop up on Instagram. She was standing in front of a small, bare apartment. Mismatched furniture from thrift stores. A mattress still on the floor. A single plant on the windowsill, the same succulent she'd brought when she first showed up at my door 3 years ago. Somehow, miraculously, still alive. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel smug satisfaction either. I just felt free because maybe that's what real love actually is. Not saving someone over and over until you're both drowning, but finally letting them face their own darkness so they can find their own light. That night, I sent her a short text proud of you. She replied hours later, thanks for everything. Even the hard part. Sometime after midnight, I lay in bed, the quiet filling every corner of my room. I realized something I'd never allowed myself to believe before. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're the most honest form of love there is. Love without boundaries isn't compassion. It's debt dressed up as devotion. For years, I'd mistaken silence for peace and sacrifice for loyalty. But now I knew the truth. Sometimes you don't need to raise your voice to win. You just quietly pull the plug and watch the lights go out on a situation that was never sustainable in the first place. The following Sunday, I went to brunch with Marcus and Amber at our favorite spot in the Pearl District. The sun streamed through the windows. Jazz played softly in the background. My avocado toast sat perfectly plated in front of me. Amber raised her mimosa. To Haley for finally choosing herself. Marcus raised his coffee. To boundaries. I raised my orange juice, smiling. To freedom. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely, genuinely happy, not the temporary kind that fades when reality creeps back in. The deep, settled kind that comes from knowing you're finally living a life that's truly yours. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Mom, Sunday dinner next week. Would love to see you. I looked at it for a moment, then typed back, I'll let you know. Busy week. I didn't owe anyone an immediate yes anymore. I didn't owe anyone access to my time, my money, or my peace just because we shared DNA. I'd learned the hardest lesson of my life: you can love your family from a distance. You can care about them without carrying them. You can be kind without being consumed. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them stand on their own 2 feet, even if they stumble at first. As we finished brunch and walked out into the warm Oregon sunshine, Marcus took my hand. You seem different, he said, squeezing gently. Lighter. I smiled, looking up at the clear blue sky. I am. Because for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't walking through the world weighed down by someone else's choices. I was just walking. Free. Whole. Finally, completely myself. And that, I realized, was worth more than any amount of money I'd ever spent trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't I love you. It's I'm done. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and let someone learn to save themselves.